our expectations is that the Aussie can get towards 70 cents around the turn of the year. But one big assumption here is that the Chinese economy will perform quite well in the sense that we will see a fiscal support coming in order to offset the headwinds coming from these trade tensions with the US.
Hi, Rodrigo. Is speculation about US-China talks on trade and tariffs pushing the Aussie dollar higher?
Oh, hi, Kirsten. Well, I would say speculation of a trade deal with some country, which we don't know which country it is, but speculation is that it's potentially a country in Asia that is actually, lifting spirits, if you like, in terms of good news coming from trade. But at the same time, there's also this underlying theme about the structural decline that the US dollar is potentially embarking on, given the policies that President Trump is implementing, particularly in terms of trade and tensions with China in particular.
And so is another plunge in the value of the Aussie likely if talks don't lead anywhere and a deal on a lower tariff regime, regardless of which countries it might be between, isn't reached?
Yeah, that's a great point. So as a reminder, the Aussie dollar is a very risk-sensitive currency. And in fact, the price action that we've seen in recent weeks is a clear reminder that when things don't go according to plan, the Aussie dollar tends to suffer quite significantly. So at the moment, there is certainly this kind of hope and expectation that a deal will be announced with some Asian country, and that will set a precedent and, if you like, a template to what to expect for other countries, and there's a little bit of a positive vibe that is supporting the Aussie dollar. So any disappointment, if you like, will be a downside risk for the Aussie.
The volatility does make it very difficult for businesses dependent on currency stability, doesn't it?
Yes, and not just the volatility, but also the uncertainty, because it's very difficult to project where we're going to be in a week's time and potentially in even a couple of months' time. And to that point in particular, whilst a trade deal may look promising in some Asian country or a few Asian countries, a trade deal with China in particular, I would say, will likely take a lot longer, and that is problematic for the currency and for the Australian economy in general.
We also, of course, should mention that Australians planning to head overseas will be wondering what their purchasing power is likely to be in the near term. The Aussie isn't the only currency heading higher on the back of hopes of a deal, is it?
Yes. So what we've seen, particularly at the beginning of all this sort of volatility, is that countries, or rather currencies like the euro and the yen, led that gain against the US dollar, whilst the Aussie lagged behind. So when it comes to the crosses, for instance, the euro and the sterling, the Aussie has been struggling quite significantly. And to some extent, again, that's a reflection of the greater degree of sensitivity that Australia has to the outlook for the Chinese economy. And that's been, if you like, a headwind in terms of the crosses. But fair to say that as the US dollar decline, we do expect the Australian dollar to start recovering against those crosses, but not imminently.
I know you did say that it's really very difficult to forecast where the Australian dollar is headed, but we must ask, where do you see it at the end of this year?
We've got quite a buoyant outlook for the Aussie dollar, and that's primarily driven by this expectation that the US dollar has embarked on not only a structural decline, but also a cyclical decline, where we expect that the Fed and the central bank in the US to begin easing in the second half of this year. So that is very important because it will push the US dollar lower, and it will provide a nice tailwind for the Aussie. So our expectations is that the Aussie can get towards 70 cents around the turn of the year. But one big assumption here is that the Chinese economy will perform quite well in the sense that we will see a fiscal support coming in order to offset the headwinds coming from these trade tensions with the US.
Thank you. And just briefly, does that mean that you expect the US Fed to remain on hold this week?
Yes, it's too early for the Fed to make any move. Like with many other central banks, they're trying to assess and waiting to see what all these tensions mean for the economy. And at the moment, it's too early for the Fed to make an assessment in terms of what it means for the US economy.
Rodrigo Catril, thank you.
Pleasure.